In the quiet halls of Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, where brilliant minds shape the future through science and imagination, John Magwell spent 33 years bringing impossible dreams to life. As a conceptual artist, his hands were his universe, sketching technologies that existed only in the realm of possibility, painting visions that would inspire generations of scientists and engineers. At 58 years old, John possessed the rare gift of seeing beyond the present. His artwork adorned the walls of one of America's most prestigious research facilities, each piece a testament to human ingenuity and hope. But on a cold Tuesday morning in his studio in Modesto, California, John stared at his easel with trembling hands, unable to hold his brush steady. The diagnosis had come like a thief in the night: diabetes, complicated by vascular disease. For 2 years, John had watched his body betray him in ways his artistic mind could never have imagined. What started as a small, seemingly innocent wound on his left foot had evolved into a nightmare that threatened to steal everything he held dear. "Before I knew it, I was in the hospital with 3 toes amputated," John would later recall, his voice breaking as he remembered that pivotal moment. The local doctors had delivered their verdict with clinical detachment. The leg had to go. Complete amputation was the only option. The infection was spreading, the blood flow was compromised, and time was running out. But John Magwell was not ready to surrender. Somewhere in the depths of his artist's soul, he refused to accept that his journey would end in an operating room with the cold finality of a surgeon's saw. His legs had carried him through galleries, laboratories, and countless moments of creative inspiration. They were part of who he was, part of his identity as both an artist and a human being. In the darkest hour of his life, when hope seemed as distant as the futuristic technologies he once drew, John made a decision that would change everything. He would seek a second opinion. He would fight for his legs with the same passion he had once poured into his art. This is the story of 3 keys that saved not just John's legs, but his entire world. It's a tale of medical miracles, human determination, and the extraordinary team of doctors who refused to give up when everyone else had already written the ending. If you've ever faced a medical challenge that seemed impossible, if you've ever been told there were no options left, this story is for you. Subscribe and stay with us, because what happened next will restore your faith in the power of never giving up. The morning sun filtered through the windows of John's art studio, casting long shadows across canvases that told stories of tomorrow. But today, those same hands that had once danced across paper with precision and grace could barely grip a coffee cup. The diabetic ulcer on his left foot had become a constant, throbbing reminder that his body was at war with itself. Dr. Martinez, the local podiatrist, had examined the wound with the practiced eye of someone who had seen too many similar cases. The infection was deep, aggressive, and spreading despite weeks of antibiotics and wound care. John watched the doctor's expression grow increasingly grave as he probed the blackened tissue around the wound site. "Mr. Magwell," Dr. Martinez said, setting down his instruments with finality, "I'm afraid we've reached the point where we need to consider more aggressive intervention. The infection has compromised the bone, and with your compromised circulation from diabetes, healing is virtually impossible." John's wife, Maria, gripped his hand tighter. They had been married for 25 years, and she had never seen fear in her husband's eyes like this before. John was the eternal optimist, the man who saw possibility in every challenge, who had built a career on imagining the impossible. But now, faced with the reality of losing his leg, even his boundless creativity couldn't conjure a solution. "What exactly are you saying, doctor?" Maria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm recommending baloney amputation of the left leg. It's the only way to stop the infection from spreading to the rest of his body. Without this intervention, Mr. Magwell's life could be in danger." The words hit John like a physical blow. He stared at his foot, wrapped in layers of medical gauze, and tried to process what he had just heard. How had a small wound, something so insignificant he had initially ignored it, led to this moment? The silence in the room was deafening. John thought about all the places his legs had taken him. Through the corridors of the laboratory where he had spent his career, up the stairs to his studio where magic happened every day, along the beach where he and Maria had walked hand in hand for decades. How could he continue to create, to live, to be himself, without the foundation that had supported him for 58 years? But as Dr. Martinez began discussing surgery schedules and recovery timelines, something deep within John's artistic soul rebelled. This couldn't be the end of his story. Somewhere in the vast world of medicine, there had to be someone who could see what Dr. Martinez couldn't. Someone who could imagine a different ending to this nightmare. "Doctor," John said, interrupting the clinical discussion, "I need time to think about this. I need to explore other options." Dr. Martinez looked at him with a mixture of sympathy and concern. "Mr. Maduel, I understand this is difficult, but time is not on our side. Every day we delay increases the risk of the infection spreading." But John had already made up his mind. That night, he would begin researching, calling, and fighting for a second chance. The weight of the diagnosis settled over the Maduel household like a suffocating blanket. That evening, John sat in his studio surrounded by decades of his artwork, each piece a testament to his belief in human potential and the power of innovation to overcome any obstacle. Maria found John in his studio at 3 a.m, hunched over his computer with the determination of a man possessed. The glow from the screen illuminated his face as he scrolled through medical websites, research papers, and patient testimonials. Empty coffee cups littered his desk, evidence of a sleepless night spent searching for alternatives to the amputation that seemed inevitable. "John, you need to rest," Maria said softly, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. But she could see in his eyes that rest was impossible. This was the same intensity he brought to his most challenging artistic projects, the same unwavering focus that had made him one of the most respected conceptual artists in his field. "There has to be something, Maria," he whispered, his voice hoarse from hours of speaking with medical centers across the country. "I've been reading about limb preservation programs, specialized wound care centers, vascular surgeons who specialize in diabetic complications. We can't give up." His research had led him down a rabbit hole of medical possibilities he never knew existed. He learned about complex vascular reconstructions, advanced wound healing techniques, and multidisciplinary teams that approached limb preservation as both an art and a science. The more he read, the more convinced he became that Dr. Martinez's verdict didn't have to be final. As dawn broke over Modesto, John's phone rang. It was his daughter, Sarah, calling from her apartment in San Francisco. She had been up all night too, researching medical options and making calls to contacts in the healthcare field. "Dad, I found something," she said, her voice filled with cautious optimism. "There's a Center for Limb Preservation at UCSF. They specialize in exactly what you need, saving legs that other doctors say can't be saved. I've already called, and they can see you next week." John felt a surge of hope that he hadn't experienced since his diagnosis. UCSF, the University of California, San Francisco, was world-renowned for medical innovation. If anyone could help him, it would be the specialists there. Dr. Michael Conti's name appeared repeatedly in John's research. A vascular surgeon with an international reputation for limb preservation, Dr. Conti had built the UCSF program specifically for patients like John, those who had been told that amputation was their only option. The center brings together podiatrists, vascular surgeons, and other specialists to provide coordinated care for patients at risk of foot or leg amputation. John read aloud from the UCSF website. This was exactly what he had been searching for, a team that would fight for his legs with the same passion he was bringing to this battle. But even as hope began to bloom in his chest, John was acutely aware of the ticking clock. Dr. Martinez had been clear about the urgency of his situation. The infection was aggressive, and delay could mean the difference between life and death. Still, he had to try. The appointment was scheduled for the following Monday. John spent the weekend preparing, gathering all his medical records, test results, and imaging studies. He approached this meeting with the same meticulous attention to detail he brought to his art. Every document organized, every question carefully considered. As they prepared to leave for San Francisco, Maria squeezed John's hand. "Whatever happens," she said, "we're going to face this together." But both of them carried the unspoken fear that they might be too late, that the infection might have progressed beyond even the most skilled specialist's ability to help. The drive to UCSF felt like a journey to another world, where miracles might still be possible. The UCSF Medical Center rose before them like a beacon of hope against the San Francisco skyline. As John limped through the hospital corridors, leaning heavily on Maria's arm, he marveled at the energy that seemed to pulse through every hallway. This was a place where the impossible became routine, where medical miracles were not just hoped for but expected. Dr. Michael Conti entered the examination room with the quiet confidence of a man who had spent his career defying medical conventions. Known throughout the hospital as Dr. Miracle for his extraordinary success rate in saving limbs others had given up on, Dr. Conti possessed hands that moved with surgical precision and a mind that saw possibilities where others saw only problems. "Mr. Madjewel," Dr. Conti said, extending his hand with a warm smile, "I've reviewed your case, and I want you to know that you made the right decision coming here. We specialize in situations exactly like yours." John felt a wave of relief wash over him. For the first time in weeks, he was speaking with a doctor who didn't immediately mention amputation. Instead, Dr. Conti spoke about treatment options, surgical possibilities, and recovery timelines that included keeping his leg. "I understand you've been told that amputation is your only option," Dr. Conti continued, settling into his chair with the easy manner of someone completely comfortable with complex medical challenges. "But that's exactly why our Center for Limb Preservation exists. We're the first clinic in the Bay Area to focus specifically on amputation prevention for high-risk diabetic patients like yourself." Dr. Conti's examination was thorough and methodical. He studied John's foot with the same intensity John once brought to his most challenging artistic projects. Every measurement was precise, every observation carefully noted. But it was more than just medical expertise. There was genuine compassion in Dr. Conti's approach, a recognition that this foot represented not just tissue and bone, but a man's livelihood, identity, and future. "The infection is significant," Dr. Conti acknowledged, "and your circulation is compromised by your diabetes. But I've seen much worse cases than this, and we've developed techniques specifically designed for situations like yours." He pulled up John's imaging studies on the computer screen, pointing to areas where blood vessels had become blocked, explaining how diabetes had affected circulation to his foot. But rather than dwelling on the problems, Dr. Conti focused on solutions. "Here's what we're going to do," he said, his voice filled with quiet determination. "This is going to require a coordinated, multi-stage approach. First, we'll need to aggressively clean out the infected tissue. That's work for our podiatric surgery team, led by Dr. Alexander Raiselman. Then I'll perform vascular reconstruction to restore blood flow to your foot by creating new pathways around the blocked arteries." John listened intently as Dr. Conti outlined a treatment plan that was both complex and hopeful. This wasn't just about saving his leg, it was about restoring his life. "I want to be completely honest with you," Dr. Conti continued. "This is going to be challenging. Even small wounds progress rapidly in people with diabetes, and you've come to us when the situation is quite advanced. Time is tissue, as we say, and we need to move quickly." But even as he spoke about the challenges, there was something in Dr. Conti's manner that communicated absolute commitment to the fight ahead. This was a doctor who didn't just treat patients. He fought for them with every tool at his disposal. "Doctor," John said, his voice thick with emotion, "other doctors have told me this leg can't be saved. Why are you willing to try when they've given up?" Dr. Conti leaned forward, his expression serious but kind. "Because that's what we do here, Mr. Madjewel. We save limbs because we offer efficient, coordinated care with a high level of expertise, and because we are aggressive in our goal of preserving functional feet. Your leg isn't just tissue to us, it's your ability to walk, to create, to live your life on your own terms." The operating room at UCSF buzzed with the controlled energy of a team that had performed this intricate dance of limb preservation countless times before. Dr. Alexander Raiselman, the podiatric surgeon who co-directed the Center for Limb Preservation with Dr. Conti, scrubbed in with the methodical precision of a master craftsman preparing for his most important work. "We've got about a 40-minute window to clean out all the infected tissue," Dr. Raiselman explained to his surgical team. "The infection has compromised the bone in the toe area, and we need to be aggressive but precise. We're not just removing diseased tissue, we're creating a foundation for healing." John lay on the operating table, sedated but not unconscious, able to hear the steady rhythm of the monitors and the quiet conversations of the medical team working to save his leg. Through the haze of medication, he thought about all the mornings he had spent in his studio, carefully preparing canvases for new works of art. Now Dr. Raiselman was preparing his foot like a canvas, removing the damaged areas so something beautiful could grow in their place. The procedure required the delicate balance of removing enough infected tissue to stop the spread of disease, while preserving enough healthy tissue to maintain the structural integrity of the foot. Dr. Raiselman worked with the patience of a sculptor, carefully examining each section of tissue, making decisions that would determine whether John would walk normally again. "The infection goes deeper than we initially thought," Dr. Raiselman murmured to his assistant. "But the bone structure is still salvageable. We can work with this." In the family waiting area, Maria paced the hallways with the nervous energy of someone whose entire world hung in the balance. Sarah sat nearby, alternately reading medical journals she had borrowed from the hospital library and staring out the windows at the San Francisco Bay. Every few minutes, a nurse would update them on the progress, each report a small victory in the larger battle for John's leg. "The surgical debridement is proceeding well," the nurse reported after the first hour. "Dr. Raiselman has successfully removed the infected tissue, and they're now preparing the site for the next phase of treatment." But this was only the first step in Dr. Conti's multi-stage treatment plan. The infection had been addressed, but John's foot still lacked the blood flow necessary for healing. Without adequate circulation, even the most skillful surgical work would fail. Dr. Conti was already preparing for the second phase, the vascular reconstruction that would determine whether John's foot could heal. This procedure would require threading tiny instruments through John's blocked blood vessels, creating new pathways for blood to reach his foot. It was microsurgery at its most demanding, requiring not just technical skill, but the kind of artistic vision that John would have recognized from his own work. "The beauty of what we do here," Dr. Conti had explained to John before the surgery, "is that we approach each case like a unique problem that requires a creative solution. No two patients are exactly alike, and no two procedures are exactly the same." As the first surgery concluded, Dr. Raiselman emerged from the operating room with cautious optimism. "We've successfully removed all the infected tissue," he reported to Maria and Sarah. "The foot looks much better than when we started. But now we need to wait for Dr. Conti to restore blood flow. Without that, all our work today won't matter." John was wheeled to recovery, his foot wrapped in sterile dressings that would protect the surgical site during the critical healing period. But even through the post-surgical haze, he could sense that something fundamental had changed. For the first time in months, his foot didn't throb with the constant pain of infection. The first battle had been won, but the war for John's leg was far from over. 3 days after the initial surgery, John found himself back in the operating room for the most critical phase of his treatment. Dr. Conti stood before the surgical monitors displaying the intricate map of John's circulatory system, studying the blocked arteries that had been strangling his foot of life-giving blood flow. "This is where the real artistry begins," Dr. Conti murmured to his surgical team. "We're essentially creating a new highway system for blood to reach Mr. Maduel's foot, bypassing all the roadblocks that diabetes has created over the years." The procedure Dr. Conti was about to perform was called a bypass graft, a complex operation that would reroute blood around the series of blocked arteries extending from John's knee to his foot. Using a section of vein harvested from John's own leg, Dr. Conti would create new pathways for circulation, essentially giving John's foot a second chance at life. Through the surgical microscope, the blocked arteries looked like dried riverbeds, collapsed and useless. But Dr. Conti had performed hundreds of these procedures, and he could see exactly where to make his connections, how to create the most efficient flow of blood to John's healing tissues. The success of limb preservation often comes down to this moment, Dr. Conti explained to the surgical residents observing the procedure. "You can clean out all the infection in the world, but without adequate blood flow, tissue simply cannot heal. This bypass is literally the difference between saving this man's leg and losing it." The surgery required hours of meticulous work. Each connection had to be perfect, each suture placed with microscopic precision. Dr. Conti worked with the focused intensity of a master artist, his hands moving with practiced efficiency while his mind calculated angles, pressures, and flow rates that would determine the success of the entire operation. In the recovery area, Maria sat with a medical textbook open in her lap, trying to understand the procedure her husband was undergoing. She had always admired John's artistic talents, but now she was witnessing a different kind of artistry, the surgical skill that could literally restore life to dying tissue. "How much longer?" she asked the recovery nurse, who had been providing regular updates throughout the long surgery. "Dr. Conti is working on the final connections now," the nurse replied with a reassuring smile. "These vascular reconstructions are complex, but Dr. Conti has an exceptional success rate. Your husband is in the best possible hands." Inside the operating room, Dr. Conti was indeed working on the crucial final steps. The bypass graft was in place, but now came the moment of truth. Removing the clamps that had temporarily blocked blood flow and seeing whether the new pathway would function as designed. Removing the proximal clamp, Dr. Conti announced. The surgical team watched the monitors intently as blood began to flow through the newly constructed pathway. Then, moment by moment, color began to return to John's foot as fresh, oxygenated blood reached tissues that had been starved of circulation for months. "We have excellent flow," Dr. Conti said, unable to suppress the satisfaction in his voice. "The foot is pinking up beautifully. This is exactly what we wanted to see." The transformation was remarkable. John's foot, which had been pale and cool to the touch for months, was now warm and showing healthy color. The bypass had worked perfectly, creating a new lifeline to tissues that everyone else had given up for dead. As John was wheeled back to recovery, Dr. Conti took a moment to speak with Maria and Sarah. "The surgery was a complete success," he reported. "We've restored excellent blood flow to your husband's foot. Now we enter the healing phase, which will require patience and careful monitoring, but I'm very optimistic about his chances." For the first time in months, Maria allowed herself to believe that John might walk again, that their nightmare might finally be coming to an end. Recovery was not the swift victory John had hoped for, but rather a daily battle measured in small improvements and careful monitoring. In the weeks following his vascular reconstruction, John's hospital room became a second home, filled with get-well cards from his colleagues at Lawrence Livermore and sketches he worked on during the long hours of mandatory bed rest. Dr. Conti visited daily, checking the surgical sites and monitoring the progress of healing with the same careful attention John once brought to his most delicate artwork. The restored blood flow was working beautifully. John's foot maintained healthy color and warmth, and the surgical sites were healing better than anyone had dared hope. "This is exactly what we want to see," Dr. Conti said during one of his morning rounds, examining John's foot with obvious satisfaction. "The tissue is responding beautifully to the improved circulation. We're not out of the woods yet, but we're definitely heading in the right direction." But even as John's foot healed, the emotional recovery was proving more challenging. Months of fear and uncertainty had taken their toll. The man who had once approached every challenge with boundless optimism now found himself wrestling with anxiety about the future. Would he be able to return to his art? Would his foot ever be strong enough to support him during the long hours he spent standing at his easel? "It's completely normal to feel this way," explained Dr. Sarah Chen, the psychologist who worked with the limb preservation team. "You've been through a traumatic experience, and recovery isn't just physical, it's emotional too. The fear of losing your leg doesn't just disappear the moment the surgery is successful." Dr. Chen helped John understand that healing was a holistic process, involving not just his body, but his spirit and confidence as well. She introduced him to other patients who had gone through similar experiences, artists and craftspeople who had faced the possibility of losing their ability to create and had emerged stronger on the other side. One afternoon, John met Patricia, a pianist who had come dangerously close to losing her hand to a severe infection. "I thought my career was over," she told John as they sat in the hospital's patient garden. "But Dr. Conti and his team didn't just save my hand. They saved my identity as a musician. Now I appreciate every note I play in a way I never did before." The multidisciplinary approach that made the UCSF Center for Limb Preservation so successful extended far beyond the operating room. Physical therapists worked with John to restore strength and mobility to his leg. Wound care specialists monitored his healing with scientific precision. Nutritionists helped him optimize his diabetic management to support the healing process and prevent future complications. "The key to what we do," Dr. Conti explained to a group of medical students during one of John's appointments, "is recognizing that limb preservation isn't just about surgery. It's about creating an entire ecosystem of care that addresses every factor that contributes to healing." 6 weeks after his surgery, John took his first tentative steps without assistance. The physical therapist spotted him carefully as he walked the length of the hospital corridor, but John's face radiated pure joy with each step. His gait was different than before, more cautious, more deliberate, but he was walking on his own 2 feet. "How does it feel?" Maria asked, tears streaming down her face as she watched her husband take those precious steps. "Like I'm getting my life back," John replied, his voice thick with emotion. Step by step, literally and figuratively. But as John prepared for discharge, Dr. Conti delivered a sobering reminder. Your diabetes is a chronic condition, and vascular disease is progressive. This victory is significant, but it's not permanent. We need to work together to manage your condition and prevent future complications." It was a reminder that John's journey was far from over, and that maintaining his health would require the same dedication he brought to his art. 1 year later, John stood in his studio in Modesto, brush in hand, adding the final touches to his latest masterpiece. The painting depicted an abstract representation of flowing blood vessels, rendered in brilliant reds and golds that seemed to pulse with life on the canvas. It was his tribute to Dr. Conti and the team that had saved his leg and his life. But fate had a cruel sense of timing. Just as John was beginning to feel truly recovered from his ordeal, he noticed a small wound on his right foot. It was barely visible, just a tiny break in the skin that he might have ignored a year earlier. But now, with the hard-earned wisdom of someone who had nearly lost everything to a similar wound, John knew he couldn't wait. The call to Dr. Conti was made immediately. "I have another ulcer," John said simply, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped his heart. "On the other foot this time." Dr. Conti's response was swift and reassuring. "Come in tomorrow morning," he said. "We caught the first one when it was almost too late, but this time we have the advantage of early detection. We know exactly what to do." The second battle for John's legs followed a similar pattern to the first, but with crucial differences. This time, there was no panic, no desperate search for alternatives. The team at UCSF moved with the precision of a well-rehearsed orchestra, each member knowing their role in saving John's remaining leg. "The beautiful thing about having treated Mr. Madjewel before," Dr. Conti explained to his surgical team, "is that we know exactly how his body responds to our interventions. We can be more aggressive with treatment because we understand his healing patterns." The second surgery was even more successful than the first. Dr. Raiselman cleaned out the infection with the confidence of someone who had intimate knowledge of John's anatomy, while Dr. Conti performed another flawless vascular reconstruction to ensure adequate blood flow to the healing tissues. Recovery was swifter this time, both physically and emotionally. John approached his healing with the patience of someone who understood the process, and his body responded with the resilience of tissues that had learned to heal. 3 months after his second surgery, John was not only walking normally, but had returned to his art with renewed passion. His latest series of paintings, inspired by his medical journey, had attracted attention from galleries across California. The near loss of his legs had somehow enhanced his artistic vision, adding depth and meaning to his work that hadn't existed before. "I'm eternally grateful to Dr. Conti and the entire team," John said during a follow-up appointment. "They're the best in the world at what they do. Had I not found them, I would have lost both legs." Dr. Conti smiled as he examined John's perfectly healed feet. "You're one of our great success stories," he said. "But more than that, you're proof that limb preservation isn't just about saving tissue, it's about preserving hope, identity, and the human spirit." As John left the medical center that day, walking confidently on both legs, he carried with him not just physical healing, but a profound appreciation for the miracles that medical science could accomplish when combined with unwavering determination and hope. Today, John Madjewel walks through his art studio with the confident stride of a man who has faced his greatest fear and emerged victorious. His latest exhibition, titled Circulation, draws visitors from around the world who come to see paintings that capture the beauty of life flowing through the human body. Each brushstroke is a celebration of the circulation that nearly failed him, each color a tribute to the medical team that refused to give up. The 3 keys that saved John's legs were deceptively simple, yet profoundly powerful. Early intervention when problems arose, coordinated multidisciplinary care that addressed every aspect of his condition, and aggressive treatment by specialists who viewed amputation prevention as both an art and a science. But perhaps the most important lesson from John's journey is this: when faced with a medical crisis that seems hopeless, never stop seeking alternatives. The word impossible exists only until someone proves it wrong. Dr. Conti and his team at UCSF had built their careers on proving that legs others had given up for dead could not only be saved but fully restored to function. "We save limbs because we offer efficient, coordinated care with a high level of expertise," Dr. Conti had explained, "and because we are aggressive in our goal of preserving a functional foot." For anyone facing a similar battle, remember John's story. Remember that specialized centers exist specifically to take on the cases others won't touch. Remember that medical miracles happen every day in operating rooms around the world, performed by teams who refuse to accept that amputation is the only answer. John's legs carried him back to his art, back to his life, back to his identity as a creator and dreamer. Your journey may be different, but the same determination that saved John's legs can save whatever matters most to you. The key is never giving up, never accepting that hope is lost, and always believing that somewhere, someone has the skills and dedication to help you fight for what you refuse to lose. In the end, John didn't just save his legs. He discovered that the human spirit, supported by medical excellence and unwavering hope, can overcome even the most daunting challenges. That's a masterpiece worth creating, one step at a time.